A single compromised node is all it takes. Within minutes, a localized infection cascades across connected systems, paralyzing global infrastructure. In May 2017, the WannaCry ransomware attack did exactly that. It swept through international networks, causing severe damage to hospitals, where it locked down life-saving medical systems. This statement from the UK's National Health Service confirms the aftermath. This was a tangible failure of systems that left frontline staff unable to access patient data or operate critical equipment. To understand how a breach of this magnitude occurs, we have to isolate the exact structural failures that allowed the code to execute. We begin with the baseline definition. Security is the protection of information systems from threats and attacks. Specifically, that protection means deploying controls to defend assets against unauthorized access, misuse, silent modification, or total destruction. But a flat definition doesn't tell us how a worm like WannaCry circumvents those controls. To pinpoint the failure, we have to map the attack against the formal architectural frameworks that govern how data is secured. Historically, establishing security was largely a physical exercise. Early computer defense focused on securing highly localized, isolated machines. The defensive perimeter was quite literally the walls of the room. Threats were tangible, requiring an intruder to gain direct terminal access to do any damage. The mass digitization of personal, financial, and medical records over the last few decades shattered that isolated perimeter. Today, the threat landscape includes the Internet of Things, incorporating everything from smart thermostats to medical sensors and vehicles. Every single connected device, regardless of how trivial its function seems, represents a potential entry point into the wider network. If an attacker compromises a smart thermostat, they can use it to pivot across the local Wi-Fi, searching for a path into a homeowner's laptop to steal banking credentials. Because the attack surface scales with every new connection, relying on a simple boundary defense leaves internal assets vulnerable, necessitating a multidimensional strategy. This diagram illustrates the CIA triad, the foundational axiom of our discipline. Every computer and network security protocol ultimately resolves into one of these three intersecting goals. The first pillar is confidentiality. This principle ensures that data is never disclosed to unauthorized users or outside processes. In a hospital, confidentiality is maintained by strict access controls, so only attending doctors and authorized personnel can view a patient's medical records. The second pillar is integrity. This guarantees that systems and data remain accurate, complete, and entirely free from unauthorized modification. For our hospital, integrity means utilizing mathematical file hashing to verify that a patient's prescription record hasn't been silently altered by malware. The third pillar is availability. This ensures that systems function correctly and data is immediately accessible to authorized users exactly when they need it. Administrators maintain availability with redundant servers, ensuring critical patient records remain online even during a power outage or a targeted denial of service attack. When we look at ransomware, we are looking at a dual-vector assault on this model. By encrypting files, it destroys integrity, and by demanding a ransom to unlock them, it denies availability. If a system cannot guarantee all three of these intersecting circles simultaneously, the asset is considered critically compromised. While the CIA triad defines our goals, it lacks complexity. We extrude those goals into a three-dimensional model, the Macumber cube, the definitive tool to evaluate a system's true security posture. Along the y-axis, we map information states. Data always exists in one of three distinct conditions: in transmission across a network, in storage, or actively processed by a CPU. The z-axis maps safeguards, technical controls, policy, and education. A successful security posture requires a rigorous risk assessment at every intersection, evaluating confidentiality, storage, and policy all at once. There are 27 specific blocks in this cube. Failing to identify vulnerabilities in even one of them creates a structural opening for an intruder. Evaluating security is a volumetric exercise. Organizations don't simply install a firewall. They have to map defenses across the entire geometry of their operations. Once we've mapped vulnerabilities on the cube, the physical deployment of those safeguards must be split into two distinct architectural scopes. Computer security locks down individual endpoints. It uses local tools like password authentication, assuming the outer network will inevitably be breached. Network security takes a broader scope, protecting the connections and outer boundaries. It secures the edge by filtering transit data through firewalls and monitoring traffic with intrusion detection systems. These disciplines handle entirely different threat vectors. Computer security mitigates local, isolated attacks, while network security manages remote, distributed, and systemic threats. However, a robust firewall is useless if an employee brings an infected USB drive directly to their desk. Defense in depth requires both layers operating flawlessly. Let's perform a structural autopsy on the 2017 hospital attack using these frameworks. WannaCry successfully bypassed the network security perimeter. It exploited an unpatched protocol to rapidly transit across the internal network from machine to machine. If we map this to the Macumber cube, the critical failure point occurs right here, at the exact intersection of integrity, processing, and technology. The localized failure happened because the computer security on the endpoints lacked the technological safeguards to prevent the unauthorized encryption of the data actively being processed. WannaCry succeeded because it triggered a cascade failure across multiple dimensions of the matrix. Both the perimeter defense and the local endpoint safeguards failed to catch the intrusion. The threat landscape continues to worsen because the tools required to execute these breaches are becoming highly automated and widely available. Today, devastating attacks can be launched by individuals with minimal technical skill, pushing the frequency of global threats higher than ever before. When every connection represents a potential vulnerability, organizations must apply the CIA triad and the Macumber cube to build resilient, layered defenses across every endpoint and perimeter.